Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hello.
Well, happy Monday,
Happy
y'all.
Monday.
Welcome.
Good morning to all of our Buy Here, Pay Here friends and colleagues and all of that. It's a beautiful Monday out here.
Or at least the three that are listening. We're welcome back to the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Glad to be with you on a Monday. Got some big stuff we're going to talk about, but first some announcements. Do you have anything you want to jump off with?
The Carolinas conference is coming up.
That's coming up. That starts on Thursday with that unfair advantage dealer mastermind
and
group.
If you are in the area and want to be able to go, let me find the thing here.
BHPH MS for morning show.
I'm looking and I'm not seeing it. BHPH. It's not. Jim deleted it. BHPH MS to get your ticket if you're doing it online, and that will give you a ticket for free.
Yep.
So, and that's we've heard such great things about that mastermind. So, looking forward for everyone that's going to be there. Would really love to hear feedback when it's all done. And we've had Terry and I'm having a hard time remembering names.
Oh, Tracy
Myers. Sorry.
And
Troy Spring. Tease.
Yeah.
Okay. So something that you'll learn about from me is it's just like, I am so bad at names, but and so sometimes I'll be, I'm thinking of a name and frequently, not all the time, I get the first letter right.
Or I'll tell her.
And I'm starting to just like,
letters right.
I was like Todd.
Yeah.
Going through all of the ones. So, so those of you who are in the area, that's a really good one to go to. There's the next big thing is the policy conference in September. Really great opportunity for dealers to go and to be able to be on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. And to be able to talk to their representatives from their state. And so that's a place where NIADA, you get to kind of see what part of your membership allows and opens doors for. And, so it's a great opportunity if y'all are interested in that part of, of going.
A couple of announcements. I got Group 3 from V8 meets tomorrow night. That's the newcomer group. We got V8 Plus gathering on Wednesday. So that's just for our V8 members. And then I wanted to make a note that we haven't shared the fact that we reached an understanding and signed an agreement with Allison Harrison, which is ALH Law out of Ohio. Many of you who are members of the Ohio Independent Auto Dealers Association would know Allison. We've known her for some time. She's appeared on the podcast before, but she leaned in with us on White Hat Way, and she's agreed to provide us some free legal support for White Hat Way, or included legal support.
Included legal support in kind for a pretty good amount of time. So there's a lot that we're going to be able to throw her way on, getting some things done. And I wanted to say before we moved away from like the V8 stuff, those of you who listen, we've talked a lot about V8, and it's getting a group of dealers, maximum 8. It's connect and compare. So the compare part, there are numbers. It's a pretty easy thing to turn in. The connect part has been just really a beautiful thing to watch and to hear about. I mean, I don't go to the meetings. Jim's the one that's running those, and to hear the connection and it's like as dealers get to know each other better, that they can have deeper and deeper conversations into the things that are happening. Now, V8 Plus is something that we're beta testing with the dealers that are currently in V8. And V8 Plus is us bringing topics to just the V8 dealers that are important things that the V8 dealers that we have that they want to learn more about. And so and kind of get a deeper dive. And so we did one a bit ago on marketing, and then asked a few different people that that about lead handling, marketing, that kind of stuff, and asked a few different people to do a video about the tips. And so we have a bunch of friends that contributed to that. This one is on it's on
pricing and markup.
And so the people that Jim has talked to is Brent Carmichael.
Mm-hmm.
That man goes through numbers. He's just seen so much. Steve Burke, who comes from the Capitol. And there's a lot of data that Agora is collecting all the time as well. And also Jimmy Rambo from Spartan.
Recording that one
and
today.
So that one is actually, that conversation is being recorded today. And then they'll be on V8 Plus. It will be a meeting with all of the V8 dealers that want to participate to go through these things and have a conversation about it.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of front row dealers, Seth Merrifield, who's well known in the Facebook
Just circles. So you all understand that V8 Plus is kind of like, it's a layer on to V8 that we're beta testing right now with our V8 dealers.
Yep. So yeah, it's all good. I think we're just trying to provide them supplemental education, additional. And so those typically I kind of choose the topics based on whatever the hot topics.
And I would just say, if y'all are thinking or are on the fence about joining V8, you get this V8 Plus this year. So if you join, it's just kind of included, because it's everyone who's a member for 2024 is beta testing this part. Yep.
Looking forward to that on Wednesday morning.
Okay.
So shall we dive into our thing? You first.
Well, we tend to stay away from like really, well, we don't. In the buy here, pay here world, nothing scares us to talk about, or nothing. It's like everything, all topics are out there, and we just have a very open and it's just like, here's how we see it kind of conversation. This has been this topic is one that just creates an awful lot of it can create a lot of tension, friction. People feel very, very strongly. And so, we over the weekend were like, we felt like it's a good time to just kind of, because the morning show hasn't been around long enough to see another election like what we're seeing that's coming up. And from my perspective, as we were talking about this, I remember the last one, same people, but it's like the last one, and how dividing at a really deep level. And so I wanted to, we were talking about how do we kind of dive into this. And so I wanted to talk just a bit about my background. And I'm going to get emotional, and it's just like, it really is. I very, very religious Christian, Reagan Republican family. My parents were delegates. I was even a delegate at one time. And very, the things that were happening in the world were frequently talked at the dinner table. And there was a very definitive way of looking at it. And so, it's like my parents, I had been married before, and so my husband and would listen to the people that would speak about the stuff, and very, very defined where the belief structure was. And so over time, I've shifted to just more of we talk about agnostic. It's like I just am observing and trying to strip away just other ideologies and stories and just like, where do I feel? How do I feel about the things that are happening? How do I see the effect? And in my family, I have shnikes. I have 4 children, and one of those children at the last election came out, whatever, as queer, and love this. Just love this child so much. And, and just watching that, and then realizing that this is not something that was a decision that was made recently. This is just like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. This is something, this is who this person is. And I remember as a parent, feeling and having been raised during a period of time where those that were different like that were some really atrocious things could happen. And so I was like, I'm so grateful. It's a time today where, it's like, be who you are, be loving, be kind. That's all it's the character of the heart, all of that. You just be you, and not feeling, I just was grateful that it was now, because I didn't feel like, be careful who you say that things to, and all of that, for fear that something could happen. And and I hear stories from this child going to local pubs or whatever, and I mean, it's very apparent that my child is queer, and having people come up and say just really, really atrocious things.
Not to you.
Not to me, but to my child and their friends and things. And so that's one of my children. And another one of my children is very it is like it's a pendulum swing of how the ideologies and a lot of those kind of things. And I've watched last election, it was like there's a civil war in our family. And there's a huge division. And I, as a parent, I'm sitting back and I'm watching everything other than love. It just is. And it's just and compassion, and trying to really understand each other, because both are very, there's a lot of emotion tied to it, a lot of personal identity tied to it. There's a lot of stuff tied to it. And it's just, so it's actually a topic we don't really talk about politics at home. We don't talk about politics.
You and me, you mean?
You and me. Well, we kind of do, but not a lot. And, it's coming from the background that I came from and all of that. It can sometimes get heated. Oh my gosh. I remember as a kid, it's just like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. And, all of this, it was pretty fear-based, and just a lot of tense energy. And so, I look at like what happened with the last election, and just from an observational point of view, there was a lot of division, divisive, just like super hard line in the sand. The kind of division that you'd hear about from, our history or whatever, where it's like, and I observed it in my own home. It's like family and I mean, my children wouldn't speak to one another because they just felt so strongly on either side. And so when we talked about having this conversation, that was where my first thoughts went to, is the divisive nature of elections.
Well, it's very heavily polarized, right? And so you've got definitely, that strong division that you were talking about, and people feel so strongly that it gets really loud, and there's a lot of shouting and not enough listening and all that kind of stuff. But I think if I can go back and give my own background, like I grew up on a farm and ranch. We didn't talk politics at the dinner table. We talked about where we were going pheasant hunting after football practice. I mean, that's the kind of conversation we had. There was really no, I don't remember ever knowing where my parents stood politically on politics.
Yeah. They were just middle America, working on the farm, creating food for people.
I mean, that's kind of was our way of life. So my introduction to politics really came somewhat at high school. I knew a few people that were into politics and debate and that sort of thing. And so I just naturally came in contact with it there. And I remember becoming aware of the presidential race, even back to junior high, but not I was never active in those conversations even. And then more so in college, like I got more introduced into, my first opportunity to vote would have been in '84. Those who don't know, I'm 60 years old. So graduated high school '82. And so I'm probably good at my first election, or my first chance to vote on the presidential race would have been '84. So I was paying more attention. I'm in college and we're sitting around, eating pizza and talking about, this
well,
stuff.
And you're talking to people that weren't just like on the farm, but people that like have opinions or that have been involved in that probably.
Well,
or was it just the ag college that just wasn't something that people really talked about?
No, they did. It was the dorm rooms. It was, at 1 a.m. or something, you're sitting around talking. And when you're tired of studying for a physics test or something, then you start talking about, things, ways of the world. And so that was more philosophy probably than politics, but something I really enjoyed. But you also know about me that I even remember back to some of those conversations in college. I'm always the listener observer. That's just my nature. Like I'm going to sit and listen, observe. I don't assert myself into conversation until I feel like I understand all the, elements of the conversation and so on. And so I remember kind of discovering that about myself as sort of a mediator, back in those days even. So that's kind of my own political lens. Like I feel strongly, and one of the things I feel especially strongly about, and this is not directed at either party, it's like, I just see this polarization that we're talking about. And what troubles me most about that, and I just said that to my mother on this visit, when she was here from Oklahoma for a few days, I was able to say to her, one of the things that troubles me most is that I watch both parties, and both seem
the major parties, the two major parties, because it kind of ends up feeling like it's a choice between two. So,
it kind of is a two-party system, but the two parties that we're all familiar with, or that are most prominent. Certainly when I watch those two parties, I feel like they both seem to lay claim to first this kind of moral superiority and religion. Like they both say, we own Christianity. We are, if you want to take it in a Christian context, which this country is predominantly Christian, then they sort of, each party is standing up saying, no, we're doing, what's right in the moral authority, moral superiority, perspective. And so they can't both be right.
No, I mean, there's other elements besides that, but it's. And
then the other part that I see where they both lay claim to is patriotism. And that one really flies in my face because, again,
like living in the greatest country, and
you can both be
we
patriots
are because of this.
You can both be patriots. I view you both as patriots. You're both trying to do what you believe is right for your country. And so, I can accept that that's the way it is, but it troubles me to see either party say, no, we're the patriots and you're not, you're un-American, and obviously all the name calling and that part of it is the part that's just really troubling. Like that's not a part of America that I'm proud of. And by the way, I never want anybody to challenge my patriotism. Like I'll fight you. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking to somebody who's, I've grown up as I love this country. I feel like I see the value of all everything that is this country. It's like, I definitely, I love this country, and every single one of my uncles wore a uniform in the armed services, every single one of them. And I'm just telling you that.
And fought. Just about like World War II, Vietnam, and Korean.
We had in World War II, but we had Vietnam and Korea.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So we had, and of course, my ancestors before that would have been World War II. But no, it's like I just think it's troubling when we start acting like we're the patriots and we are the only ones who care about America. And
we're the only ones that
are standing in the way of American patriotism. And I think that's just dangerous, right? That's just not. And so I think we can touch on this and we come back around. But I think where this correlates for me and why I felt like it was appropriate for us to bring it into the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show is one of the things we see in our industry is that sometimes there's a lot of conflict. Okay. And it's one of the areas that we anticipate White Hat Way is going to step in and play a role. It already has started to play a role in some of that. But it's like, I see that when it comes to conflict, that people aren't listening, and that there's a lot of fear tied up. You touched on fear earlier. And I would say, when I look at the whole thing, it just looks like we're definitely in a place where, because of fear of the other party, because of what we've been told about the other party, not because we sat down and listened to them and what they believe, but because of what we've been told.
What we were told to think about what they said.
Sure.
What we were told to think about.
The other side.
The other side. Yeah.
And
it's
evil and
just
dangerous.
So amazing to me to sit back, because we don't watch the news.
Yeah,
we don't. We don't. And so
we would recommend it some of you.
We would recommend it too. And so when something, we hear through social or whatever, then we'll take a look and try to understand. That actually brings up something. So, over the weekend, there was something that came up on social. And so Jim and I kind of had a conversation about it, and we were like, what do you think? And where does that strike you? And it was really interesting. It's like, I want to understand the perspective. So I actually, I talked to one of my sons, because I kind of understood how one of my sons believed, and that already. So I talked to my other son, and I was like, hey, can I have a conversation with you? I want to understand X. And so we got into a dialogue, and it was just very, it's like, this is what was da 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 da, and it was like, oh, okay. And so it's like, I feel like I understand. I told them at the beginning, it's like, I have a question about politics that I just really want to understand something from a different perspective. And so help me understand this perspective. And so just a really respectful, I love this person, and, just conversations like, oh, okay, thank you. I think I understand your perspective. I really appreciate your time. And so it's, it allowed me the opportunity to just kind of hearing someone else's perspective on something. And I think that's key. And that's, it's and I hear in anything, politics or whatever, that when you speak at someone trying to change their mind, especially someone that believes in something very different.
Yeah.
You can't change someone's mind by speaking at them and then throwing, darts and all of that, because then, if the other person, so you have if you're going to speak at someone, that person is either going to throw darts back or crawl underneath a rock, and then victory. And this is something that it's something I've been reading about recently. It's just really, really interesting about, fear and power and those kind of things. And where when we approach a conversation with, I'm going to convince you of the way I think, it ends up being either you overpower or you end up in a war. If you approach a conversation with, I want to understand what it is that you think, without even saying what it is that, and injecting what you think about it. It's just like, I want to understand what it is, how you perceive, what it is that you're thinking, why you think that way.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to turn around and come back and say, well, this is how I think. It's like, because that person, my son, I didn't come back and say, well, what about da, da, da? I did have a couple of clarifying questions, but I ended in a respectful way of being able to say, I think I understand. I think I understand.
And I recognize it's something I've learned in marriage, is when Michelle comes to me and says, I want to understand why you leave your coffee cup or your dishes out. And of course, my answer is I'm late for a meeting. I mean, I can help you understand that later. You're not listening.
Coffee. I was looking. We've had a lot of comments, and I'm kind of reading through them because we usually read through them before we post them up. And I didn't bring my glasses, so if you see me doing this,
okay. I don't
trying to read through.
But I think it's just I'm obviously just being a smart aleck, but I think that's the part I see. And by the way, I'm much more cynical than I was at a young age. Like I'm still pretty easygoing and pretty open-minded. But I think that's one of the things you touched on without exactly saying is that I think one of the dangerous things, and this really I want to extend to all of us in business too, is when we come into some conversation with a closed mind, and sometimes in our world, ego influences that. Sometimes it's fear, but it's like this idea we're going to enter into a conversation. We've got our mind made up. We already know the right way to do something. I see it all over social media. People, and I saw a thread, last week of people arguing about business models and certain approaches. And I'm like, everybody's got their mind made up. Like, nobody's here to really educate and help each other. I should say nobody, but for the most part, the people were just kind of, this is why I do it. And any of the rest of you are idiots is kind of the tone. It's like, that when you have your mind closed, you really just limit yourself from learning and expanding.
Yeah.
And so this is why I think in politics, we can have the same thing. It's like we really, when we close our mind and we believe that we're right and we stop listening to the other side, there's just no real room for progress. And that's the part that troubles me most. As a patriot, I'm saying, I want to see progress. I want to see us get away from this stalemate nonsense and make some progress on some of these divisive things. And you picked some certain issues for me, and I want to come back to it, like we can cover it later, but I traditionally have not voted at the presidential level on any one
party
bucket.
Yeah.
Well, not one party. It's like even a bucket. Like if you pick social issues or financial issues or whatever, I don't typically vote the presidential position based on any of those. First of all, none of them are that important to me. Like I don't have a dog in any one of those fights necessarily, but mostly when I choose a presidential candidate, I'm voting based on character. Like I'm voting character because I view our commander in chief and the top executive in our country as being the person who's going to be in the room when it's time to meet with heads of state and, to otherwise, go to, these summits on our behalf and speak to heads of state. And I want them to represent me. And I want them to represent me with character and integrity. And I want to know that they're not putting their own interest ahead of, the country because they represent me and they have a very strong position in representing me as an American, as a constituent. And this is why I vote character. I want to know that this person is going to stand with character on a global stage.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
So this is the part
absolutely.
I'm going with. So
absolutely. One of the things with having Jim's mom here and talking with her and the conversation, because it's the time of the year that those kind of things creep into the conversation. And Jim a couple of times is like, ladies, I'm not going to talk about this. Change of topic. There is, just from some of the things, the things I've read, all of that, there is a pretty even split of when you look at this, two-party thing, this pretty even split. And it's interesting because both of them are like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. And this kind of thing of like, what I believe is true, what you believe is true, what I believe is true, what you believe is true. And that's a really interesting thing to kind of dive into, where, when someone says, I can't believe, it's like, but half the population does. So why? What is it that is creating a trigger or it's like
First of all,
feel very emotional.
Half the population.
Well,
you can say half of the energized.
Half of the energized. Thank you. Half of the active vocal population is one way or another, and to this whole talking for the understanding and not trying to do that, to boom, boom, boom. This is what I think. But understanding that your brother, that half of this, they feel that the reason why they feel so energized is because they either don't feel heard, or it's just like, this is something that is so important to my core. And so it's like, how can we like really understand why some of these things affect people to the core? And it's like, people are born in different places, different times. It's like I've got a son who a child who is queer, and I've got a child who is not, is like a polar opposite to that. And it's like there is both are valid. Their reasons, both people are valid, because it's like, we talk about your perspective is my reality, right? And I, as a buy here, pay here dealer, can't just shove down a customer's throat, no, my perspective is right. No, my perspective is right. No, my perspective is right. It's like, it's this thing of coming together. And it's like, I want to understand your perspective, and then let's have a conversation about it, because the other person's perspective is valid. It may not be it's that whole, I'm always putting things on social Facebook where you're looking at something, it looks like a circle, and then someone standing somewhere on the side, no, it's a square. Well, what it is, it's a cylinder. And so it looks from the side like a rectangle, from the front like a circle. It's like both perspectives are correct, but they're not complete.
But you would never have that if you didn't step over to the side
and you
with
didn't
an open
stop.
mind.
Yeah.
It's just that's
and instead of saying this is the only way you should look at it, it's like, no, it's still a thing, and it's seen from different directions. And so, to understand, because I believe all of the travels that we have done, all of, talking with people all over the place. I've had the blessing of being able to travel a lot of the world as well. Humans are good.
Yeah, we see that.
Humans they really are. They want to feel safe. All humans want to feel safe. They want to feel a part of community. They want to have food in their belly, a roof over their head. People are good. And that includes all of the things, when I'm looking, it's like good. So how do we bring it together?
I would say that the other version of good that I see is not only do pick somebody in middle America, not only do they want to have a roof over their head and food for their family, but they want their neighbors to have that too.
Yeah.
That's the part that I think is like, if I just make it me, and take care of me, and I'm going to vote for whoever's going to take care of me, then that's one thing. But if you're going to think about, and I would generally say that what you described is true as we travel. It's like we see that, and this is not just also through social media and places we interact at the grocery store and just anywhere. It's like, I think what you can see is that if you just listen to the news, you would, and regardless of which channel you listen to, you would believe that the other side is, evil and out to do the country harm. And if elected, they'll cause you this problem. And the other side is saying the opposite. And so in the middle, you've got all these people who are, they genuinely want what's good for their neighbor. They genuinely want what's good for this country. And
they generally don't want to hate.
Yeah. The hatred.
They don't want to be angry.
And the vitriol.
And they don't. Yeah. They just want, can I just have a peaceful existence and just like let people be people and let people, they're not bothering me.
And it's not to say that people shouldn't mobilize. And obviously when around matters of presidential races, then you mobilize. And I think one of the things we have to draw as a distinction, like I see some of the questions coming in, is one is, how would each party impact the auto industry? I'm just going to say that I don't think the president has that much impact. And I would never vote the president based on my industry. That's how I make my living. But the presidential seat is so much bigger than my industry.
It is, isn't it supposed to be? That is the commander in chief of the armed forces, which are about how how our country presents itself on a world stage.
That's one of the biggest roles. And I think the fact that they carry that responsibility says a lot to me about who that person is and what the role of the executive branch in our government is. So, we can have another civics class one day and talk about the branches of government. But I think what I'm hearing when it comes to auto industry, I think that's a legislative branch matter. And the president, if enough people in the legislative branch favor it, then the president will sign it. If they won't sign it, then we got a problem. We got something we got to do. But that's just, I haven't seen that to be the case. I think if the legislative branch, it's a legislative branch that we would work through. I mean, when NIADA and NADA have a problem, they don't go meet with the president. They go meet with
their state and their representatives. Yes.
And so I think that's really a matter where I don't think you vote your president based on your industry. I don't even think, I wouldn't recommend to people that they vote based on their particular personal social issue, what matters to them. So it's like, and I get it. We all kind of live in this thing where we're most energized around the thing that is most important to us. So I get it. I would simply say that maybe we should consider, looking beyond that and deciding when we choose our commander in chief, because when the commander in chief is sitting with some head of state in another country and they're talking about some conflict that is about lives of men and women, I don't think it's going to have anything to do with that social issue that's so important to you back home. I don't think that's what they're talking about. And so to me, that's what, when we choose a president, that's always been way back since I've chosen candidates, and since I've chosen to vote, I have chosen to go with the person I think is going to be the best representative for my nation on a global stage. The end. And so that's where so I draw that line. So, and I would say, I would make the prediction. That's why I said, when we make some prediction, I'm not going to tell you, Trump's going to win or some other candidate's going to win. I'm going to make the prediction that the American people will do what has to be done. I'm going to predict that the American people do what has to be done collectively. They will stand up and do what has to be done in order to make sure that this country continues to progress and that it maintains its standing
and be united.
I'm more cynical about that than I once was. I mean, I think progress is slow. That's the part that frustrates me. The whole loggerheads thing. And you've heard me talk about this in a political context. And this is really more of you could say it's politics, but for me, it's more of a chess move. Like, I think if you could get about 3 to 7% of the electorate to choose some people down the middle, then you could begin to break up this loggerheads that is the two parties, back and forth. And what happens? That one president is elected and now it sways over here for 4 years. And now it's back over here for 4 years. But it's like loggerheads. We're both fighting. We're both out there trying to win the soundbite war every day. And so it just gets ridiculous. And so that's the part that, for me, on the outside, from a chess move standpoint, if I were to try to break that log jam, I would be trying to get some people elected down the middle who could pull and could start to create compromise.
And that's the big thing, is being able to have compromise and being able to communicate and someone who can listen with the intent to understand and then move from there.
Well, I'm just saying, by virtue of how the voting works, I'm just saying, purely is why I say it's a logical move. It's a tactical move. It's like, in terms of getting some movement on the vote. And so let me be the leader of that 7% that shows up in Washington and sits in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the parties together, and we're going to hear their sides. And then we're going to say, okay, our group has elected to go with, this party on this matter. And so you're out unless you can bring some compromise. If we can find some compromise that we can all vote on, wonderful. Otherwise, we're over here and we have the votes to go.
And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with one of our colleagues that last week, and we were talking about just in business, bringing this person in as an advisor or whatever. And it's like, you may like feel very strongly about A, I may feel very strongly about B, and the intent is to come to C. Yeah. And it's just like, where can we honor the things that are important to both and find a common balance where it's like everyone can walk away and go, I had a part in helping create that. I feel heard. I feel.
Yeah. And I think before that, I mean, the compromise part is important, but I think the thing that troubles me is in the news right now, what you're seeing is what makes the news is the sensational parts, which is the polarized, the loudest group on each side makes the news.
That's the thing that's most concerning to me, is to watch. And it's just and I don't, it doesn't matter what end of the camp, because I'll watch one and then I'll look at the other, and it is just, I'll use the term fear mongering. And there's just like, you take a quote and it gets twisted into something ugly either direction. And it just becomes, you need to be afraid. You need to be afraid because fear sells. And it gets people, to watch more. It gets, it just, but the problem is that when you create enough fear, that people react out of fear.
I'll make one more prediction. You ready?
Okay, go.
I'm going to predict high voter turnout.
Okay? I hope so. I really, really do.
I think people will turn out for this election.
I hope so. Okay. And vote. Yeah, I really do.
They will. And then when that happens, the majority will have spoken. And it's the part, this is no longer a prediction. I'm just saying what we have to be watchful of is, we live in a country that's ruled by the majority. And I prefer it that way. That's, 7th grade civics class. That's what we learned. It's like, that's how the vote works. And that's how the electoral college works. And yeah, we can be cynical and talk about all the other influences of big dollars, and we can go there. But I'm saying this country still has a system that allows us to be governed by the majority. And sometimes it's frustrating to be in the minority. And so you go around and you vote again next time. But in the meantime, you don't get loud. That doesn't solve anything. Remind me when you're talking earlier about, conflicts. I was thinking about my dear friend back in Texas, who I really loved and respected, but I had to tell him one time, I said, nobody's ever won an argument based on volume. You don't win an argument based on volume. So anyway,
true.
So it's like, you're certainly not going to win one with me based on being loud.
Yeah.
But in fact, you're probably going to, shut people off typically. But I'm saying the majority is going to speak. And when the majority speaks, I hope those who are in the minority will step back and say, okay, I'm in the minority. I get it. I'm going to still express my thing. And I'm going to recognize that I live in a country that feels differently than I feel right now as a body. And I'm not going to get loud, and I'm certainly not going to get violent.
And I would strongly suggest is that recognize that whatever happens with the majority, that it's like you can call it a name and you can be angry about it, because I've seen it from both sides. It's like anger, and it's just like venom, poison towards the other direction. It's like if when the majority speaks, it's like I'm hoping that before it gets to that point, that we approach this in a spirit of understanding,
right,
and in a spirit of empathy, and a spirit of like, I truly want, of love. Dare I say, it's just love.
You can certainly step into a conversation with empathy, but I would say you can't have understanding until you listen.
True.
So you got to start with just listening. You got to be willing to listen and hear people all the way through. Hear them out.
And listen to them without I'm adding all the ticks of the things that I have to now address. And, this is why you're wrong. This is why you're wrong. This is why you're wrong. Because I have watched it again from both both sides. It's just, that it's listening to respond, but not listening to understand, and listening to argue, but not listening to compromise or to come together.
And let's just recognize that as long as there's been a constitution, there have been opposing ideologies.
There has been, yes.
There have been opposing ideologies all along. And so that will continue to be the case. You're not going to get everybody to unite and agree, and it's not going to be kumbaya around this one issue. It's just probably not ever going to be that way. But what we have to have is have a system that we can all trust and that we can participate in and accept the results and not get more agitated because, we watch kids with a tantrum. No, you can throw a tantrum, but you're not getting a sucker. You know what I mean? It's like we can't condone that sort of behavior in any kind of a system, because it just doesn't serve anybody. And we need to focus on the work at hand and not on the tantrums. And so I think this is where, right now, tantrums is what makes the news. And I think if we have our track of news, then we're obviously going to get, fed a certain way of thinking. And if we don't really go listen to the other side or find some place in the middle where you can get some good information, then, it's just natural. If we sit in an echo chamber, it's kind of expected what's going to be the outcome. Right. So it's just, for us, I think for me to wade into the political thing, especially the presidential race, I just wanted to be able to say, can we talk about voting on something that is, so I kind of teased the thing and said, who should, I would recommend used car dealers vote based on character and trust. Do they trust the candidate as their commander in chief and as their president to represent the interest of their business, their family, the end? That's how I would recommend used car dealers vote. That's how I would recommend anybody vote, is based on
for the commander in chief. It's like on a world stage.
Sure.
Does this person represent?
At the other levels, sure, talk about different things and different issues, and you might decide based on somebody based on a certain issue. But I think, at the presidential level, we want somebody who's going to have character and represent us with character on a global stage. So
you're, again, what you say, my prediction. Yeah. So what?
I have two predictions, basically, that people will show up at the voting booth.
That it will be a very high turnout.
It will be a high turnout. And I believe that the good, that is the American populace, that is, are there troublemakers? Sure. Are there people who are violent and whatever? Of course. It's my belief, and it's my observation, that there are lots of really well-meaning people in this country. They'll stand up.
Yeah. This just made me think of something that I frequently with my children, and I believe this because the reason why I have this ideology is because I saw it play out on a world stage. And that is, no one can make you feel anything. No one can make you do anything through your feelings. You choose. You choose if you're angry. You choose if you lash out. You choose if you get violent.
Sure.
No one makes that choice for you.
Sure.
And so for me, it's asking all of our listeners to be responsible of how they move forward. Yep. And knowing that I need to, that I own my feelings, my actions. No one, and put yourself in a position where, there may be fear. It's like, no, I get to choose how I feel, and I get to choose how I react based on those feelings. And no one, and like I said, global stage, because I told the story, and I'll tell it just to our audience about why this means so much. And my kids remember this, or, and they'll come and say, so-and-so did such and such. And I'm like, I would like to hear the other side of the story, because, if I were to just listen to you, it would be all of this. But I read an article, and this is accounts from many, many people, that during World War II, at the end of World War II, when the Allied forces went into Germany and some of the other areas that had concentration camps. We know like the atrocities, the just horrific. And if anyone had a reason to be bitter and angry and be full of hate, it would be those people that were sitting behind bars or sitting behind those gates. And that one of the things that in many of the concentration camps that they had happen as they freed them is they took the jailers and they lined the street so that those that they're leaving, that the people leaving would pass through them. And it's like, and the intent is see what you have done. See what you have done. And so the story, the accounts that I've read is that people would pass the people that were in the concentration camps, and there were, primarily Jew, but lots of, Gypsy and Polish and all of that. There would be those that would just come by and they would spit on and then curse, and all of that, curse the jailers. And then there were those that embraced and forgave, literally, physically went up to those and put their arms around them and said, I forgive you.
Okay.
And so we have an opportunity. No one can make you behave. It is a personal, internal thing. Yeah. And so I would just strongly suggest that we remember that we get to be an individual and be responsible for how and choose to be responsible for how you speak, choose to be responsible for how you react to things, and understand that once we allow someone to make us feel something, we have just given away our personal power, because now they're in control of the things. But we choose. Yeah. We choose whether or not we give away that power.
I follow that. I would just say, probably for me, I could close with just the idea that if I'm able to speak to any used car dealers today, their managers, any of their people, I would just say, I would just challenge anybody who's, engaged in this campaign, especially when they're feeling at some level of stress. I would say a couple things. Turn off your TV more. Listen to the TV less, okay? The other thing would be make a conscious decision to choose to operate with an open mind. That's number one. And this could be true in your business. When you're in the office today, have your mind open. That's in conversations with your employees, conversations with your customers. Have an open mind. And then as you listen to them, this is borrowed from something on social media. We've heard different parts of this before, but as you listen to them, listen from a place of curiosity and empathy.
Ted Lasso. Yeah.
Well, Ted Lasso said, what was the word? How did he say it? With curiosity, not judgment.
Yes.
Right. So the same thing here. It's like listen with curiosity and empathy. Leave the judgment aside. That means you bringing your own views into the thing. Open your mind. Listen with empathy. Listen, with that expectation of understanding.
Because I do believe that there's more commonality. I think there's so many ways that people can come together and not feel angry towards each other.
Well, and it doesn't mean at the end of that conversation and the end of listening to them that you have to do exactly what it is they want to do. But when you hear them fully and you have that empathy for what's going on, then now you can make a better judgment.
And you can also compromise. It's a better way to compromise.
You can choose to compromise, whatever the outcome is going to be, but to do it based on limited information and judgment
and emotion.
It doesn't serve us. So that's enough for me.
Wow. Okay. This has been a topic that we don't wait a little bit of a departure. And some of the comments were like, well, how does this affect Buy Here Pay? It's like this, it does. It's just like how we show up and how we want to communicate with others. And that's kind of the basis.
Occasionally we're going to talk about something bigger than Buy Here Pay. That was our Monday. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for making us part of your Monday. we appreciate your support and listening. If you want to be able to listen again, some of our social media accounts, you can see and see other things and listen to other episodes, or go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and so you can kind of get more content on what some of the mostly 99.9% is about Buy Here, Pay Here. So right. I hope you guys all have a great day. Thanks again so much for joining, and have a great rest of your week.